Okay, we are at the McDowell Road Revitalization project. So many people here, it's exciting. Hey, look at the little waves and stuff. Yay!
That's cool.
Pod.
I have engagement in the outreach for the Street Transportation Department. We have a great team here today. I'd like them to go ahead and introduce themselves in the order their names appear, and then I'd like to invite Councilwoman Pastor to come up and make a few more remarks. First, let's begin with Director Joe Brown. And then our Deputy Street Transportation Director for Design, Construction, and Design and Construction Management is Ruben Lawley. Then we have Jorge Riveros, who is in charge of traffic services. Leticia Vargas will be your main presenter tonight. She's Special Projects Administrator. Then we have Carl Langford, who's our traffic safety engineer. Mary Ella Brown, who oversees active transportation for the city. And Randy Ruar, who is the project manager for this project. Councilwoman Pastor, would you like to come up and say a few words? And if you don't know, you should have gotten a gold and silver coin. They're not souvenirs. We actually have a physical exercise at the end of this.
I wonder what that physical exercise would look like. I'm a stretch over here, stretch over there, I don't know. Good evening, it's great to see everybody. Thank you for joining. There are going to be several different options presented. And it is your voice, as I believe, as you see me advocating throughout the city, that community has a voice, and the voice should be heard, and it shouldn't be silenced. So, please listen to all the different dynamics or conversations or presentations, and I will be sitting here listening. And then I'm sure there will be dialogue afterwards. Are you guys ready? Yeah, because we want to use this when we get home to our family.
Up to here.
This is Director Joe Brown.
Good evening. I want to thank first Councilwoman Pastor for her involvement. She's been very involved in this project. We appreciate her staff and their input. I'm new to the Street Transportation Director position. Been involved in this project for about 4 months. I've been in the job for 6 months, but very happy to be here.
Mike, hear your mouth.
Okay. But I'm very happy to be here. Can you hear me? Great. If you're curious how the project got started, the team gave me the background, and I think it's worth sharing before we go forward with our presentation. The Phoenix Community Alliance and the Merchants Association began meeting about this project more than 5 years ago. It's McDowell Road from 7th Street to State Route 51. Residents and businesses in the immediate area wanted a more pedestrian-friendly and inviting place to explore the diverse dining and shopping experience along the Miracle Mile. After it became clear the stakeholders of this project involved the type of construction and streetscape elements we build, it became a street transportation project. Initially, the focus was entirely on the area behind the curb, not the roadway itself. Some of the goals were to foster a sense of place, promote connectivity, walking, and access to transit, add lighting, shade, and landscaping to make it more inviting for pedestrians and shoppers, and ultimately develop a project to support by the merchants, residents, and key stakeholders. As our department had our first public meeting in September of 2022, we were asked to explore the addition of bike lanes. We fast forward to our October and November 23 meetings, and we got an enormous public response that bike lanes were desired, but only if they were protected bike lanes. The project got a little farther away from the original intention, which was along the Miracle Mile and placemaking and planting trees and those types of elements. So we brought the project back to that, keeping the focus on potentially doing active transportation and bicycle lanes, but Also, the initial purpose of the project, which was to look at what can be done when we were on. That said, our concepts that you saw in the fall have changed to these hybrid concepts that include possibilities of doing stuff with both of those purposes. Tonight, my team will share back of curve only options and some additional concepts that will require further study, grants, or other significant funding to bring to fruition. The funding we have right now is to complete the planning effort, and we've identified some potential funding that would only get us to about 30% design. We don't currently have funding beyond that. Design is a much more intensive phase of any project where we've identified exactly what is above and below ground that may need to be designed, around, or moved. With that, let me turn it over to my very capable team and introduce Leticia.
Okay, I will. Thank you. Thank you. So again, good evening everyone, welcome. Again, my name is Leticia Vargas and I'm a Special Projects Administrator. I currently lead the planning and pre-design section as well as our active transportation team. So I first want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. And I will tell you that I've been a part of this study since it began. And so all the public engagement that has happened through this project, it's been very exciting. And it really is all of you that have really had a vision for McDowell and has really directed this project. I also want to have this opportunity to thank my staff, who I believe has done an amazing job. And I will start with Brandy Rourke, our project manager.
Yay, Brandy!
As well as Mariel Brown, our active transportation program lead. I think we're doing amazing things in Phoenix now. So with that, let's jump into our study area. So this area, I know you've all seen, we've been studying McDowell Road from 7th Street to State Route 51. So essentially, we're looking at 1.5 miles of corridor. And that's illustrated by the green line that you see in this exhibit behind me. In addition, we're looking at an influence area or a study area that is about 3/4 of a mile in all directions from that green line. And that's illustrated by the area that's bounded by that oval shape that you see in that map in front of you. What I also want to point out is all the different colors and the dots. The yellow specifically speaks to bike lanes that are adjacent to the corridor. We see those on 12th Street. We're currently working on a project on 20th Street that is very much an active transportation corridor, which does include federal funding, so we're excited about that project. In addition, we have several transit blue dots that you see on this map. So there's a lot of movement, people walking and taking the bus, and so the opportunity is really out there to make McDowell Road a system that connects to a lot of different infrastructure in the area, including some pedestrian bridges that cross interstates. For example, 2 along I-10 and 1 across State Route 51. So a lot of good things going on that could really create some synergies with this project on McDowell Road. Thank you. So when I think about McDowell Road and how it all began, I want to share a story, about the community who had a vision. There were multiple stakeholders. Joe mentioned Phoenix Community Alliance, the McDowell Merchant Committee, neighborhood groups, local businesses, residents that had a vision for McDowell to see it more vibrant, multimodal, and safer. So that's the vision that you all are coming tonight to really build on that. If you recall, back in 2021, the city applied for a Maricopa Association of Governments MAG Design Assistance Grant, and we got it. And what that allowed us to do is to start this process that took us to about 15%. That study essentially completed a report, and that was in April of 2024. So just last month, we kind of wrapped that report up. In that report, and what you've seen throughout the public processes, is we looked at 3 options. And those 3 options, there was an overwhelming sentiment of one particular option. We're going to call that the preferred option. And that option did have bike lanes. But what we also heard is that the community wanted more. They wanted more. So that's what we're here tonight to talk about. We're going to show you what we're calling the concept option refinement phase. And I'm going to tell you right off the top that these are concepts. They have not been vetted by any engineering firms. They are really the creative minds of my staff using, resources that we have at our fingertips called Street Mix. And we were like, how do we give you more? How do we do more? And so that's what we're going to show you tonight. So I really want to preface tonight's exhibits with that point, that they have not been fully vetted yet, okay? So just to make that point very clear. It started this summer is this refinement, the concept refinement phase that will take us from 15% to 30%. And in terms of design and construction, or final design and construction funding, with my background in federal funding or federal grants and middles, I really think this is a great project for a large discretionary grant. And I'm very optimistic if we get there, we'll be submitting. I think it's going to be a great project. Next slide. So let's recap this pre-design phase that we talked about. So over that process, we had 3 public meetings, including the one tonight. Actually, that makes it a 4th meeting. And we also had 2 surveys with over 1,000 responses. We attended over 7 presentations in different neighborhood groups, and we also presented at 2 coffee shops in District 4. Next slide, please. So let's jump into the existing condition of McDowell Road, which I know you're all familiar with. So currently we have 3 lanes going eastbound, and we have 2 lanes going westbound, and we have our 2-way left turn lane, which allows for left turns into the various businesses that front McDowell Road. We also have sidewalk along the entire corridor. Granted, it is older sidewalk, and it varies in width along the entire corridor. On the north side, which is to your left, it's detached sidewalk. So there's a little buffer with that grassy area, or that area. And then on the south, it's called attached sidewalk. So we have sidewalk that's closer to the roadway. Next slide. So when we talk about the preferred option, the option that kind of raised to the top with the process we started, in order to do that, we had to remove the lane of traffic in the eastbound. If you recall, there was a 3-2 configuration. In this preferred option, we're showing 2 lanes in each direction with a 2-way left turn lane, and we were able to add the bike lanes, and then we were also able to add sidewalk about 7 feet wide. And then we also were able to do street lights. On the existing lights, on the north they would be attached, and on the south they would have their own separate poles. Next slide, please. What the preferred option also, and we needed to remove the lane of traffic to make that happen, and then we were widening the sidewalk as well. Next slide, please. So based on our second community survey, as I mentioned before, we had an overwhelming request for this 3rd option. And so what that concept, I apologize. So in addition, obviously, we we had over 670 responses, and what we also saw, in addition to the responses, was that overwhelming desire to do more, So with this next several slides that I'll be showing, is we tried to focus on those overwhelming mores that were being asked. Looking at protected bike lanes, widening sidewalks, maybe lowering the speed potentially, and then enhancing the aesthetics where the business fronts are. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start showing these concepts for consideration. Again, no engineering evaluation, I can't stress that enough, but let's jump in. So with the Street Mix resource that we use, I want to try to orient you to some of the icons that you'll be seeing in the presentation. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Trees and shade, bike lanes, vehicular traffic is the little car icon, and then sidewalk widening, excuse me. Next slide, please. In addition to that, we'll be using color-coded circles. Green would indicate a very positive impact on that particular feature. A dash circle would indicate a smaller but positive impact on that feature. A red dash circle would be a slight negative impact on that slight feature. And then a solid red circle means that there is a negative impact to that particular feature. Next slide, please. Please keep in mind that all the options that I am sharing with you would require a 1 foot to 3 foot easement on each side of the street, and all the options that we considered would not be impacting any of the buildings. So I want to stress that off the top. Next slide, please. So first concepts we're going to share with you tonight that will not move the street curb. So the street curb stays in its current location. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to start with option A. Now, option A is what I am considering a true aesthetics type feature. So in this particular, we were not focusing on bicycles at all. And we're going to show you, like I said, everything at this point. So in this case, we will maintain 3 lanes of traffic, keep our 2-way left turn lane, and our 2 lanes westbound. Because this is a streets aesthetics improvement, we're looking at a very positive impact for shades, for shaded trees along the corridor. And then we'd be looking at widening the sidewalk for a more pedestrian-friendly corridor. The speed limit would remain at 35 miles per hour. Again, very walkable corridor in this case, but no bike lane improvements or no bicycle infrastructure. Option A. Next slide, please. So what option A does is we have a lot of trees along the corridor. Our sidewalk width would be widened and consistent throughout. And project cost, this would be our lowest cost option in terms of building out this project. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to jump to option B. And could we slide 1 back, please? Okay, so this is the option B cross-section. In this case, this is what I'm calling the preferred option that we talked about. We'd be able to do 2 lanes in each direction with the 2-way left turn lane, add the bicycle lanes. We'd be able to add trees where they fit, and then also do sidewalks. But again, there's no protection. So again, I understand we need to do more. Next option, next slide, please. In this case, we're getting the trees that are desirable, the sidewalk width, we're getting bike lanes. Again, we're losing 1 travel lane. Project costs would still be on the lower end because as you'll see in the other options, they do go up. Next slide, please. So option C, here we're looking is our first attempt to do protected bike lanes. In this particular configuration, what our staff, how we were able to achieve this is by creating a solid median down the middle. It would be about 3 feet wide, which I have to point out is not standard. 4 feet would be minimum, but again, we're trying to think outside the box and see how we could fit protected bike lanes. In this particular case, we have 2 driving lanes in each direction, 2 eastbound and 2 westbound. We have protected bike lanes with about 3 feet of concrete protection, and then we have about 5.5 foot of sidewalk. We would still be able to do some trees, and then our sidewalk width would be about 6 feet wide in this particular configuration. Speed limits could be lowered to 30 miles per hour in this situation. What I do want to point out is by putting in a median with concrete down the middle, this does restrict left turns into the local businesses. We would still be able to accommodate left turns at the signalized intersections, but anything in between would be restricted by that median. So I do want to point that out in this particular configuration. Next slide. So with this option, we'd still be able to give some trees where they fit. Sidewalk width would now be 6 feet. We'd be able to get protected bike lanes. Project costs would go higher on this one because now we're introducing concrete. We're doing concrete medians and protected bike lanes with a concrete separation. We would still need to lose a lane of traffic. Speed limits could go down about 5 miles per hour. One thing to keep in mind is because now that we have the concrete strip, protected bike lane strip, now we have to look at access management in terms of consolidating driveways so that we can minimize that, or rather ensure that we can keep that protection as long as we can, but consolidate the driveway so we still allow for access into the business. And then this one would prohibit the left turns mid-block between the signals, essentially. Next slide. So now we're going to look at concepts that will widen the curb. So essentially, our road is we're going to push those curbs back a little bit. Okay. So now we're going to look at those designs. Option D. So with option D, by allowing us to push back the curb a bit, we have, again, 2 lanes in each direction. Now we can fit the 2-way left turn lane back into the design. We still can do the 3-foot bikes separation. And then we have our 6-foot bike lanes in this particular configuration. What we don't know for sure is that we may not be able to get any trees with this option. There is the option of structural shade, potentially. Again, all of that would be evaluated with an engineering full design. So just very high level, this is what we're trying to fit in the street. And then with this situation, we'd be able to do 6-foot sidewalks. And our speed limit would be about 30 miles per hour. Next slide. And so in this case, we're increasing the sidewalk width, we're adding protected bike lanes. Our project costs are definitely going to go up because, again, now we're pushing back the curb returns. Now we're impacting drainage. So we're going to actually have to do a little bit more work with the drainage as well. And then we're also adding concrete for the protection. So again, we're going to lose a lane of traffic. Speed limits could go down. We still need to do the access management to consolidate driveways to try to get as many of the local businesses accommodated. And then we would potentially have less trees along this corridor, but we could potentially look at shade, structural shade as an option. Next slide. Now we're going to be talking about concepts that will narrow the street curb. So now instead of going out, we're going to take the existing curb and go in, physically narrow the road. Let's look at the slide. Option E, this is what the cross-section looks like. So in this particular situation, we are still providing 2 lanes of travel in each direction. We maintain a 2-way left turn lane down the middle, which allows the left turns. In this particular situation, because we're moving the curb in, we're able to do a protected bicycle facility at grade with the sidewalk. This is different. We have not seen this in Phoenix yet, so it is something that is new, but it is something that is done in other places. So that's why we're showing it here tonight, because it is an option. It does provide protection between the vehicular traffic and the bicyclists. So in this case, we could lower the speed limit as well. Again, we don't know for sure how many trees we can get in the corridor with this configuration. But again, the engineering study would figure that out, and then we'd also be able to look at structural state as well. Next slide. In this option E, we would be widening the sidewalk, elevating the bike lanes for a protected facility. Our project costs would definitely go in again because now we're changing, again, the drainage patterns. We're adding concrete costs as we narrow the roadway. We're taking away a driving lane, street trees. Again, until we do the final design, we know how impactful that would be. Speed limits could potentially go down. And with this, we would still need to consolidate driveways to access the businesses. Next slide. So now where do we go from here? So what you see in front of you is basically our timeline. As I mentioned, the 15% MAG-funded design concept report was just completed in April. As we have just shared some concept options that we can definitely consider and start a design, we could be ready to go as early as summer 2024 or as soon as the fiscal year starts, which is after July 1st. What that would do is allow us to study options with your input, the little gold coins that you have, to figure out 2 to 3 options that we could consider for this next phase. That would take about a year to fall 2024. And then again, at that point, we'd be looking for design funds, potentially with a federal grant is what I'm potentially. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Heather.
So, welcome,
Councilwoman Hodge Washington.
Thank you, Joe, for introducing me. I'm so glad to see each and every one of you out here. As you probably have already heard, getting the community's feedback is really important to us to make sure we understand what the goals are and how we can effectuate those. So I really hope that this was helpful to understand what it is that you really want to see and how we can figure out how to work that out for your good. So I will not stand in the way of you being able to make your choices. I just wanted to say good night to each and every one of you.
So the questions I have, and I was writing notes, so forgive me. In all the options, can we reduce the speed? That's what. So I want to go from option 1 to all the way where we're at. Can we reduce the speed? Sure. See, because option A says 35, so can we reduce it to? I'll get to you right now. Can we reduce it to 30, like in all the other options?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, possibility. Well, I'm just going to ask the questions and you guys can. In some of the options, there's no projected bike lanes. And I have said throughout my whole tenure that I will not allow bike lanes if they're not protected. We have allowed bike lanes in District 4 that didn't have protection and became a whole dynamic. So I have committed to the community that. So I guess in option A, there's no protected bike lanes, but the width of the sidewalk is bigger. So I would, depending on what option they choose, if they choose option A and they want protected bike lanes, what does that look like? So those are just my questions. And option C, and I'm trying to read my notes. The legal, it said no, not the standard. What does that mean? Does that mean it's not in the standard book?
She's talking about the middle median being 3 feet instead of 4 feet wide.
You can answer. I mean, you can answer these questions later. I'm just throwing them out to the community. And when it says no engineering valuation, I'm going to break that down. no engineering evaluation needs. These are only concepts. So I want to put that out to the community, because some people will say, I went to a meeting and this is what we voted on, and why isn't it happening? These are concepts, and then after that, the engineering will become part of it to see if it can happen. So I just want to be clear to the community on that piece. I think that's all my notes. I saw you. Can I get him, because he's been waiting patiently, and then we'll move to your next.
Sir, would you like to come up and speak into this microphone here?
No, I'm not really a public speaker. I want to make a stand here. Can everybody hear me? I hope.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a bad attitude. I was wondering when I first came, it's going to be you're telling us what the answers are, or you're looking for our inputs. And to start with, I've been driving on McDowell Road, that section, since 1962. I think that's like 62 years. I've been riding on it and walking on it on buses since 1955. And that's my neighborhood, so to speak. And when you're taking the traffic lanes away, it's obvious, because I went to Phoenix Union High School and then ASU. It's obvious you're going to restrict the traffic. You want to choke the traffic to something. I think there's 30,000, 36,000 cars a day going on both 7th Street, 16th, and McDowell's right in there. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a big number. Now, I don't know how many bikes there are and all that. And when you get my age, you don't really want to ride a bike. I have some. But you fall and you break your bones, you go to the hospital, they get you morning and you get to die. So some of us aren't used to riding bikes. And if you take a look at how many accidents are because of bikes, or bikes are involved versus the traffic flow, you've got to make that decision point on it. The way I see it, living in this neighborhood since, the neighborhood down here, 58. Yeah, it's nice to have bike lanes, and it's nice to make sure everybody's walking and ride their horse or donkey or something. But some of it's like cars, and so to me, I'm strongly adverse to that median concrete. It's nice to free flow of traffic, free flow of business for those that had money to spend after our taxes.
Okay.
So I'm thinking you got a false assumption here when you base the whole thing on these options. No, the assumption is one of the obvious options back in my days is leave it like it is, so to speak. Throw a tree.
Thank you.
That's a good segue. This is the
Turn lanes, are they ever going to be turned into reverse turn lanes, during rush hour?
Smooth.
I'm not supporting that, I'm asking that. I don't want that to happen either, nobody else does, right? So I'm making sure that that's not the case, that you get these turn lanes and then all of a sudden it returns to reverse them. So I'm not advocating.
Actually, that option C has a concrete median in the center that would make it
can't do it.
impossible to
No, it
do.
was a different option. Option C was just like the visual that I got.
Oh, you can see that camelback.
Yeah.
Got
I
it.
think option E or whichever one's on the turn lane, I just want to make sure it wasn't going reverse lanes, because as you could see by the reaction of everybody, nobody else wants that either, so I just want to make sure. Do I get it up? Okay, bike path, the raised bike path, is that done in any other city? You said it's not done in Phoenix, but is it done in any other
What city?
In
Boston. Boston.
And I saw.
Austin.
Austin as in Texas.
I saw my bike expert friend, Nicole. What do you know about the raised bike paths? Was it good, bad?
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems like we could do.
This is fun, right? We could do this. And I know Aaron well enough to know he doesn't like reverse lanes. We're actually hoping to get rid of the reverse lanes on 7th Street. He's trying to make a point that they suck. Yeah. But with anywhere where there's crosswalks or bike lanes that are raised, you greatly reduce injuries, right? And I wouldn't consider myself young, but I am here to support any generations that are younger, because this is the future for them and also the businesses. And we don't bike for recreation. It's affordable. It's an affordable choice for a lot of us. A family of 4 in my house, 2 teens that are able to drive, they bike. And we do this even in the summertime. And thanks for that question again, Aaron, because raised anything for pedestrians or bikes greatly reduces injuries from vehicles. And reducing the speed limit also helps businesses out too. So with that, it's great. It's going to help people see businesses more, And also anything that could help slow in general, getting more people feeling safe, protected by lanes will encourage people walking more. And there's always a way, I'm a certified arborist, there's always a way to get trees in there, even with limited space, so thank you.
So for option C with the large median,
Oh.
can you hear me?
There's some cap here, so I'm gonna be fair.
So option C has a large median. How far along the project is that median? Because that's going to impede people going into their residential homes, correct? Am I assuming that? Right?
Businesses.
No, there's residential on Burl Street, you got, right? To access Valletta, to access Coronado, right? So if you're traveling down McDowell, how far is that median? And then with the businesses, if you can't turn left, are you now going to allow U-turns on 16th Street McDowell, which that could be an issue, because I think that's probably the worst intersection in the valley.
It's all concepts. Good question.
General questions.
I don't think it's on. Regarding, regarding automobile traffic as well, the flow impact, do we have any, I mean, I'm sure there's data that's been collected, studies that have been done, because traffic all around town has been just changing a lot in the past couple of years, so I have a lot of concerns about removing a lane, and so, so are there also projected estimates based on current rates of population growth? And can those estimates be shared with us? Thank you. Okay.
My question is, with removing a lane, has it been considered how this could impact our first responders, police, paramedics, and fire, and how that could impact their ability to get to Banner, One Center, Children's Hospital, Art Center, Valleywide, you know, how all of that could impact the lane.
Okay.
It does.
Which option has the most trees added to the system?
Okay, and Donna, and then
Okay,
one more, and then we're going.
excuse me, speaking of trees, the historic commercial district of Miracle Mile, which goes from approximately 14th Street to 19th Street, never had trees. And what I'm most worried about is I would encourage trees, but who's responsible for taking care of them? Because if you expect the businesses to water them properly, around all that cement, that's gonna buckle the cement, then it's gonna buckle the street, and then we're gonna have the tree butchers that come along, and you know what they do,
They're
and then the tree
monitored by the
dies.
city of Phoenix.
So that's a good question, and the gentleman in the blue, that's.
I'm just wondering how come we're not addressing the bus stops? I live on 16th Street in McDowell, and the bus stop right in front of the Circle K is more of a shelter for the homeless. And I'm trying to open up a restaurant right next to the bus stop on 16th Street and Grill, Christina. I'm gonna take over in July, and I don't see my business succeeding unless we modify those bus stops. I know the city of Phoenix makes money from those billboards on the bus stops, and they serve more of a hideout for the homeless to do their drugs. And we can put some kind of an umbrella with benches with no recliners on it, so we can fall asleep on it. And it's very important for you guys to take that into consideration. And I also have another question for transportation. I know you guys manage the parking lot, the public parking lot in front of, next to the Circle K. And we're trying to get our alley gated. And the only one using the alley is Maggie's thrift shop to put the trash can there. If she can move her trash bin to the City of Phoenix parking lot. Because the funeral home already, they have the trash can on their property, and the Circle K, they also have their trash can on their property.
Okay.